If you've ever wanted a man to miss you so intensely that he sits alone in his room staring at the ceiling like a sad Victorian widow questioning every life decision he's ever made, then what you're about to hear is going to feel like stepping into a secret world of male psychology that no one teaches you. Because today, you're going to learn how to trigger the deepest, hardest, most painful version of I miss her that a man is capable of experiencing. Not the casual kind. Not the she was nice kind. Not the maybe I'll text her later type. I'm talking about the type that hits him in waves, attacks him at random hours, makes his chest tighten, makes his ego crumble, and forces him to confront the parts of himself he's been avoiding. This is the level of missing that whispers through his mind at the gym, haunts him at work, climbs into bed with him at night, and squeezes his heart at 2 a.m. when he can no longer pretend he doesn't feel anything. And the best part? You don't have to be toxic, manipulative, or dramatic. You don't have to chase, beg, plead, or perform. You simply have to understand him in a way he does not understand himself. Ladies, men are simple, but they are not shallow. Emotionally, they are like Wi-Fi, strong one moment, non-existent the next, and conveniently unreliable when you need a stable connection. But underneath that inconsistency is a truth they will never admit. Men feel deeper than they show. Men break quietly. Men miss loudly inside their own heads. Men don't cry in public, they collapse in private. Men don't confess their fear of losing you. Their minds whisper it in the cracks of their pride. And once you understand the hidden architecture of the male psyche, his shadow, his unspoken archetype, the wounded anima he doesn't want to face, and the painful journey toward individuation he avoids, you unlock a level of emotional gravity that pulls him toward you long after you're gone. The first psychological shift is what I call detachment shock. This is when your silence speaks louder than your affection ever did. Women often believe that a man will miss them when they try harder, when they explain, when they fight for clarity, when they ask what went wrong. But men don't miss effort. They miss the absence of effort. They don't miss words. They miss the silence that replaces them. They don't miss your presence. They miss the sudden space you create. Detachment shock begins the moment you step out of the emotional role he quietly assigned you. The moment you stop sending those good morning texts he took for granted. The moment you stop checking in, stop asking if he's okay. Stop carrying the emotional weight he never appreciated. Not because you're angry. Not because you're punishing him, but because something in you simply snapped into peace. This is where the earthquake starts. A man can ignore your pain, but he cannot ignore your peace. He can overlook your tears, but he cannot overlook your calm. He can dismiss your words, but he cannot dismiss your silence. And the reason is simple. He never thought you'd stop. In his mind, you were the constant, the reliable, the emotionally available, the one who cared, tried, reached out, softened issues, smoothed conflict, and held the connection together. So when you shift from warmth to stillness, his internal alarm goes off. At first, it's confusion. Why is she quiet? Then it becomes discomfort. Did I do something? Then insecurity. Is she losing interest? Then fear. Is she done with me? Men don't say these thoughts out loud, but they feel them. They feel them in their chest, in their pride, in the sudden panic that crawls up their spine when they realize you're not reacting the way they expect you to. That's the beauty of detachment shock. You're not fighting him. You're not arguing with him. You're not proving your worth. You're not explaining your value. You're letting the absence of your energy reveal everything he refused to see when you were giving it freely. And this is the moment he begins to miss you, not lightly, but painfully. Because the truth is, men don't appreciate presence. They appreciate absence. They don't appreciate consistency. They appreciate the moment it disappears. They don't cherish the woman who is always there. They cherish the moment she stops being there. The second emotional undercurrent that starts building inside him is the losing you paradox. This is when his ego begins to realize that he is not in control. Men never miss what they still believe belongs to them. They miss what they're afraid of losing. And the moment he senses your emotional distance, even if you haven't said a word, the ground beneath him shifts. He starts noticing your silence in the spaces he once used to fill with excuses. He starts imagining scenarios where he no longer has access to you. He starts replaying conversations he dismissed. He starts revisiting moments he brushed off. Not because he suddenly became thoughtful, but because the threat of losing you rearranges his entire emotional landscape. If you want to see a man panic, don't yell, don't cry, don't beg, pull back with dignity. Nothing terrifies a man more than a woman who finally stops trying. When he senses your energy shifting, not in anger, but in liberation, his ego wakes up. Suddenly he's aware of the fragility of your patience, the limits of your forgiveness, and the possibility that your heart is quietly closing the door he assumed would always stay open. That awareness alone creates an emotional tremor that shakes him from the inside. Then the memories come. Small ones at first. The way you laughed at something he said, the way you tilted your head, the way you pronounced a certain word, the way you looked at him that one morning, the way you fixed your hair, the way your scent lingered on his clothes. Men pretend they don't notice these things when they're with you. But once you're gone, these tiny memories become emotional hauntings. They echo in his mind louder than any dramatic moment ever could. Your silence becomes the backdrop. Your memories become the soundtrack. This is how missing begins. This is how regret grows. This is how a man emotionally unravels without you lifting a finger. There is a moment in every man's emotional journey where he starts realizing something he never expected. The silence he once interpreted as attitude is actually indifference. And the distance he once brushed off as mood swings is actually detachment. This realization doesn't hit him all at once. It creeps in slowly like cold water seeping under a door, rising until he suddenly notices he's drowning in thoughts he can't control. Because now, for the first time, he's not sure where he stands with you. He's not sure what you're thinking. He's not sure what you're feeling. And the uncertainty begins to eat at him from the inside. Men like to pretend they're logical, stable, and unbothered, but the truth is that nothing destabilizes a man more than the unknown. When he can't predict you anymore, he loses his sense of internal control. When he can't read your energy, he loses his sense of emotional authority. And when he can't feel your presence the way he used to, something inside him begins to crack. The same man who acted like he didn't care, who acted like he could replace you easily, who acted like you were doing too much, suddenly becomes hyper-aware of every shift in your energy. He notices the tone that no longer sounds warm, the responses that arrive slower, the conversations that don't stretch the way they used to. He notices the lightness in you, lightness that used to be directed toward him and now floats freely without touching his world. This is when the losing you paradox becomes real for him. He feels the loss before he can name it. He feels the distance before he admits it. And what troubles him the most is that he can't tell if you're doing it on purpose or if you're genuinely done. Men are terrified of emotional finality. They fear the moment a woman stops loving them, not because they lose her love, but because they lose the version of themselves they only accessed through her. You didn't just care about him. You softened him. You reflected parts of him he didn't know how to express. You made him feel chosen. And the fear that someone else might be experiencing that version of you now, that fear hits him harder than the breakup itself. But while he's spiraling internally, you're beginning to rediscover yourself. And this contrast is what intensifies his emotional panic. He sees you becoming lighter, happier, quieter, more private, more selective. He sees you investing in yourself instead of him, and in his mind, that's the equivalent of watching sand slip through his fingers. He wants to grab it, but grabbing faster only makes it slip quicker. So he stays silent, hoping you'll break first. But you don't. And that is the moment he begins to miss you uncontrollably. Then something else begins to happen. Emotional echoing. The mental reruns that play when he least expects them. Men never confess this. But the memories that hurt them the most are not the dramatic ones. It's always the small, intimate, unplanned moments that hit hardest. A woman's smile in a certain light, the warmth of her hand on his arm, the way she leaned into him when she was tired, the soft tone she used when she cared, the inside jokes that made them feel like they lived in a secret world. Men pretend these things don't matter, but once you're no longer around, these memories become emotional daggers. He remembers how you looked at him one night when he said something vulnerable. He remembers the way you laughed when he said something stupid. He remembers the way you tucked your lips in when you were holding back a joke. He remembers the shape of your silhouette in his passenger seat. And these memories don't come softly. They hit him like emotional flashbangs, random, disorienting, painful, because now they are moments he cannot recreate, moments he cannot revisit, moments he recognizes he should have valued, and because his ego won't allow him to show emotion directly, he begins to express it indirectly. He might scroll through your pictures but not like anything. He might type messages and delete them. He might check your online status but say nothing. He might replay old voice notes or reread old conversations. He might even convince himself that he's just checking, but he's not checking. You're haunting him. Emotional echoing is powerful because the mind associates your memories with the safety and warmth he no longer feels in his current life. And the more peaceful your absence becomes, the louder his memories grow. Silence creates space. Memory fills it. Regret follows. Then comes the inner collapse he never saw coming. Identity distortion. It begins quietly, like a whisper he ignores. But the more he sits with your absence, the more he starts questioning himself. Not the surface-level questions he used to avoid with humor or distraction, but deep, uncomfortable ones. Was he enough for you? Did he take you for granted? Why didn't he try harder? Why didn't he choose you the way you chose him? Why did he assume you'd always be there? He starts replaying arguments where he should have been gentle, situations where he should have listened, times where you needed him and he chose himself, moments where his pride mattered more than your peace. And because men are raised to avoid emotional introspection, this self-reflection feels like stepping into cold water. It shocks his pride. It strips his ego. It destabilizes his self-image. He always believed he was the good guy, the hero, the man who meant well. But now, in the quiet aftermath of your withdrawal, he realizes something painful. Maybe he wasn't the man he thought he was. Self-reflection hits men differently. Women reflect to grow. Men reflect when they have no choice. And the realization that he could have been better, could have loved you better, could have valued you more, is the beginning of his emotional unraveling. He doesn't tell anyone. He won't admit it to his friends. He won't post anything vague. But inside he starts feeling the first cracks of regret, the kind that lingers in his chest, the kind that sharpens with silence, the kind that turns missing you into fearing he may never get the chance to fix what he broke. There is a specific moment in a man's emotional descent when his mind begins working against him instead of protecting him. Up until now, he's been able to convince himself that things are fine, that you're just busy, that you'll eventually reach out, that everything will go back to normal the way it always did. But when the silence stretches just a little too long, something shifts. His certainty collapses. His predictions fail. His ego loses its grip. And suddenly, the thoughts he used to confidently dismiss begin circling him like vultures. It always starts with a simple question. A question he never considered when he assumed you'd always be available. What if she's actually done? Those 6 words turn his stomach inside out. Because this possibility, real, quiet, unannounced, slips under his defenses like smoke. The kind of thought he can't fight with logic or pride. The kind that makes his heartbeat pick up without explanation. The kind that makes him check your social media 3 times in 30 minutes, even though he knows it won't give him answers. Men don't spiral logically. They spiral emotionally. And the moment uncertainty replaces entitlement, the downward slide begins. Now his mind starts filling in the gaps he can't control. Where is she? Who is she with? Why isn't she thinking about me? Does she even care anymore? And he hates these questions because they don't just scare him, they expose how attached he still is. But the more he tries to push them away, the louder they grow. This is when the missing becomes sharp. Not soft, not nostalgic. Sharp like pressure behind the ribs. He didn't think he'd miss you this much. He didn't think your absence would feel this heavy. He didn't think the woman he once thought he had endless time with would suddenly become a stranger he no longer has access to. Then the emotional echoing intensifies. He starts remembering things he never even paid attention to before. The way you used to adjust your sleeve, The way your voice softened when you said his name. The way you'd tilt your head slightly when you were curious. The way you sat in the passenger seat tapping your fingers to the rhythm of whatever song was on. Men pretend they don't notice these things because acknowledging them makes them vulnerable. But now that you're gone, every small memory becomes a story his mind keeps replaying. Sometimes out of longing, sometimes out of punishment. This is also the stage where he becomes hyper-aware of your peace. Nothing threatens a man's confidence more than seeing a woman doing fine without him. It destroys the narrative he used to comfort himself. He used to believe you needed him more. He used to believe you'd always come back. He used to believe your emotional softness meant you would never walk away fully. So when he sees you living in your own world, smiling, healing, glowing, evolving, something inside him snaps. This is when replacement anxiety bursts through the cracks in his ego. Men fear other men more than they fear losing a woman, not because of competition, but because another man represents the reality he tried to avoid. Someone else may give you what he never did. Someone else may listen to you the way he didn't. Someone else may step into the emotional space he left empty. He pictures you sitting across from another man at a cafe, laughing at something that isn't even that funny. He imagines you getting dressed for someone who isn't him. He imagines another man seeing the parts of you he failed to value. These images aren't real, but the emotional impact is. His ego begins to shiver. His stomach tightens. He starts questioning everything. Is she already moving on? Did she meet someone smarter, better, more attentive? And though he won't admit it out loud, this fear becomes the catalyst for his unraveling. Because men don't fear losing love, they fear losing exclusivity. They fear being replaced. They fear being forgotten. They fear watching a woman they expected to stay become the woman who effortlessly outgrew them. As replacement anxiety spreads through him, something else awakens. Regret. Real regret. Not the weak kind where he says my bad, not the superficial kind where he pretends to care. This is the version that sits heavy in the stomach. The version that hits him in the shower. The version that makes him stare at his phone, questioning whether he should say something, anything, just to pull you back into his orbit. He starts replaying nights where he should have listened, days where he should have shown appreciation, arguments where he chose pride instead of partnership. He replays every moment where you offered softness and he responded with distance. And now the silence forces him to confront the truth. Maybe he was the problem. Maybe he ruined something rare. Maybe he pushed away the woman who actually cared. But the most painful moment comes when he realizes the version of you he once knew no longer exists. Because while he's falling apart, you're quietly rebuilding. You're getting stronger, calmer, wiser. Your energy is cleaner. Your boundaries sharper. Your heart more protected. The woman he left behind is not the woman he would get now, even if he tried. This realization, soft, silent, devastating, is what makes him break down emotionally. He begins to understand that your detachment isn't a game. It's growth. It's self-respect. It's a woman reclaiming her energy after giving too much for too long. And this is when he starts wishing he had done better. Wishing he had listened more. Wishing he had cared sooner. Wishing he had been a safer place for you. But wishing doesn't bring you back. Wishing doesn't restore trust. Wishing doesn't erase the part where he taught you to live without him. Now the internal pressure reaches its peak. He scrolls through old photos. He replays old voice notes. He even considers sending a long message but stops because his pride won't let him. And that conflict, wanting to reach out but being too afraid of rejection, becomes its own torture. He wants you back, but he doesn't know how to earn his way back. He misses you but doesn't know how to say it. He's hurting but can't admit it. And this emotional trap is exactly what makes the missing grow deeper, sharper, more unbearable. Because now it's not just longing. It's fear. It's regret. It's self-confrontation. It's the collapse of everything he thought he had control over. It's the realization that losing you wasn't just losing a person. It was losing peace, softness, comfort, grounding, reflection, and emotional safety. There comes a point in a man's emotional unraveling where the missing doesn't just sit in his chest anymore. It begins shaping his entire day. It changes the way he thinks, the way he moves, the way he interacts with the world. He wakes up with a heaviness he didn't have before. He goes through his routine on autopilot. He looks at his phone more than he wants to admit. He tells himself he's fine, but something in his energy says otherwise. Because now your absence isn't just noticeable, it's undeniable. And it's rewriting the way he sees himself. This is where identity distortion deepens. At first, he tried to convince himself that you pulled away for reasons he could easily dismiss. Stress, timing, mood, overthinking. But the longer the silence lasts, the more he's forced to acknowledge the truth. You didn't pull away randomly. You didn't become distant accidentally. Something inside you shifted, a shift he helped create. And now he's stuck in the uncomfortable space between denial and realization. It's a space men hate entering because it requires emotional honesty, something they avoid until life forces them into it. He starts asking himself questions that don't feel good, questions that scrape at the surface of his pride. Why didn't I take her seriously? Why did I act like her feelings were dramatic? Why did I ignore the small ways she tried? Why did I treat her consistency like a guarantee? And these questions are not gentle. They hit him in waves. They interrupt his thoughts when he's trying to focus. They keep him awake when he wants to sleep. They make him stare at the ceiling with the kind of regret that tightens the jaw and burns behind the eyes. This is the stage where he finally sees the truth he refused to see before. Not because you told him, not because you exposed him, but because the silence forced him to face himself without the distraction of your love softening the reflection. When a man loses the emotional safety net a woman once provided, he's forced to sit alone with every flaw he tried to hide, every insecurity he tried to mask, every selfish decision he justified. And the more he sees himself clearly, the more the guilt settles in. Not the guilt for losing a relationship, but the guilt of realizing he mishandled someone who genuinely cared. Then the emotional echoing intensifies into something he can no longer control. It's not just memories now, it's scenes. He remembers moments with painful clarity. He remembers the time you looked disappointed but stayed patient. The time you tried to explain how you felt and he brushed it off as overthinking. The time you were quiet and he didn't ask why. The time you gave him affection he didn't know how to receive. The time you were there, present, open, kind, and he didn't realize that one day that softness would not be available to him anymore. These moments replay in his mind like a movie he regrets starring in. A film where he now sees everything he missed while it was happening. And with each replay, the emotional weight grows heavier. Because now he understands that what he lost wasn't ordinary. You weren't just another person. You were the mirror that reflected his better self. You were the presence that grounded him. You were the affection that softened him. You were the stability he never appreciated. Losing you isn't just losing a woman. It's losing a version of himself he only accessed through you. Then comes the collapse he never thought he'd feel. The quiet realization that you no longer revolve around him. He checks your social media more than he admits, not because he wants to control you, but because he's searching for signs that you still think about him. But the more he looks, the more he sees something that terrifies him. You've stopped centering him emotionally. Your glow is returning. Your energy is shifting. Your interests are expanding. Your presence is lighter. And none of it seems connected to him anymore. This sends him into replacement anxiety in its purest form, not the insecure kind where he compares himself to others, but the existential kind where he realizes he may have been the one who taught you to outgrow him, that another man might meet a version of you he never deserved, that another man might benefit from the emotional work you did to heal from him, that another man might experience the softness he once assumed would always be his. And this possibility doesn't just scare him, it destroys the illusion of control he once held. He starts imagining scenarios he can't escape. You laughing with someone else. You dressed up for a night out he wasn't invited to. You receiving attention he once took for granted. You being admired by someone who actually recognizes your worth. These images run through his mind not because he's delusional, but because he finally understands how easily a woman can be loved correctly when she's no longer wasting her energy on someone, unwilling to meet her halfway, and suddenly everything he dismissed before becomes important. Your loyalty, your patience, your softness, your effort, your consistency, the way you didn't give up easily, the way you tried to communicate, the way you cared even when he didn't deserve it. He starts replaying the things you used to say, realizing they weren't complaints. They were warnings, quiet alerts he ignored, signs he brushed off because he thought you'd always stay. Now the weight of reality hits him with full force. He didn't just lose a partner. He lost someone who genuinely saw him, someone who added meaning to his life in ways he took for granted, someone whose presence made him feel chosen, secure, grounded, someone who offered love without conditions, guidance without criticism, affection without manipulation. And the hardest part for him to accept is this: you didn't leave loudly. You left quietly. You didn't create chaos. You created distance. You didn't punish him. You reclaimed yourself. And men don't fear a woman who leaves in anger. They fear a woman who leaves in silence. Because silence means the decision is real. Silence means the emotion is gone. Silence means the chapter is closing, not dramatically, but permanently. And now he feels the emotional breakdown forming, pressure building behind the eyes, tightness forming in the chest, regret pooling in the stomach, a sense of loss he cannot shake. Because for the first time, he realizes the door he always assumed would be open might already be locked. There is always one moment, one tiny, seemingly insignificant moment, that pushes a man over the edge. It's rarely something dramatic. It's never a big announcement or a final confrontation. It's usually something ordinary, a song in the background, a scent he recognizes, a place he passes, a photo that pops up, the way you once said his name. It's something small, but inside his chest it hits like a collapsing ceiling. Because in that moment he finally feels the full weight of losing you. Not as a possibility, not as a fear, but as a reality he can no longer escape. It hits him when he's alone, when no one is watching, when all the distractions he uses to hide from himself go quiet. Men don't break publicly. They break privately, invisibly, quietly. And now, all the tension he's been holding, every regret, every memory, every fear, every echo of your absence rushes into him at once. He feels it physically, like a drop in his stomach, like a tightening in his chest, like a burn behind the eyes he tries to blink away. This is the moment his pride can't protect him anymore. The moment his ego can't deny the truth anymore. The moment he stops pretending he doesn't miss you. The collapse doesn't feel like heartbreak. It feels like a reckoning. He realizes you're no longer a part of his daily world. He realizes the love you once offered is no longer within reach. He realizes he can't text you the way he used to, can't expect your softness, can't rely on your emotional closeness. And the tears that form are not because you hurt him. They come from the truth he now has to sit with. He hurt himself by not valuing you when he had the chance. He starts replaying all the things he should have done but didn't. The messages he wanted to send but didn't. The moments you needed him and he didn't show up. The little ways he failed you, not intentionally but carelessly. And now the realization sits heavy on his chest. You didn't leave because you stopped caring. You left because you finally cared about yourself. You left because he made you feel unseen, unheard, unprioritized. You left because he didn't give you the emotional safety you were giving him without question. This realization is what breaks a man's composure, because it forces him to see himself not as the man he thought he was, but as the man he actually showed up as, someone inconsistent, someone dismissive, someone who didn't protect your heart the way he should have. And the truth that hurts him the most is that you didn't want to. Much, you simply wanted reciprocity. You wanted presence. You wanted honesty. You wanted effort. But he measured your needs as pressure instead of recognizing them as connection. Then comes the deepest layer of missing, the emotional void. The place where he realizes that no one he meets carries your softness, your light, your energy. He can talk to new people, but the conversations feel flat. He can flirt, but it feels forced. He can try to move on, but nothing touches him the way you did. The world feels quieter without you. Colors feel duller. Days feel longer. Even his victories feel slightly emptier because he no longer has that familiar voice to share them with. You were a presence that filled the background of his life. Now that you're gone, everything has a hollow echo. He didn't expect you to become his piece. He didn't notice when you quietly began holding pieces of him he never shared with anyone else. The way you encouraged him when he doubted himself. The way you softened him when he was hardened by the world. The way you saw through his silence. The way you stayed steady when he was distant. These things he once saw as ordinary now reveal themselves as rare, and that rarity torments him. Because while you were loving him fully, he was giving you fragments. And he only realizes the difference after you're gone. This is when he starts imagining the version of the relationship he could have had with you if he had shown up earlier, listened more, cared deeper, tried harder. The version where he didn't disappoint you, didn't ignore your emotional cues, didn't make you feel like you were asking for too much. He imagines the future he could have built with you, and the vision aches. Not because it's impossible, but because he realizes he sabotaged it himself. And now that regret becomes the heaviest emotion he's ever carried. He begins to wonder about your days. Are you happy? Do you think of him at all? Have you fully healed? Are you smiling more now? Did someone new enter your life? Someone gentler? Someone more intentional? He imagines you outgrowing the pain he caused. He imagines you becoming stronger, more confident, more peaceful. He imagines you stepping into a life he no longer gets to witness, and the idea that someone else might now receive. The version of you he failed to appreciate. That someone else might be holding your smile, earning your trust, kissing your forehead. This is the thought that finally shatters him. Men don't break because a woman leaves. Men break because they realize she left for reasons they created. They break because her distance exposes everything they refuse to fix. They break because her silence forces them to confront everything their pride tried to bury. And they break because once a high-value woman walks away with grace, instead of anger, that door rarely opens again. But here's the final truth. You didn't make him cry. Life did, his choices did, his carelessness did. You simply stepped out of the narrative he expected you to stay trapped in. You didn't chase. You didn't beg. You didn't force anything. You simply became unavailable to the man who never expected to lose access to you. And that is what makes him miss you to the point of emotional collapse. He cries because he realizes you were loyal. He cries because he realizes you were patient. He cries because you loved him with sincerity he didn't know how to receive. He cries because the woman he took for granted became the woman he now cannot forget. And he cries most of all because he finally understands that the peace he once found in you will never return the same way again. Your healing became his heartbreak. Your growth became his lesson. Your silence became his reckoning. And your absence became the story he will replay for years, wondering how different everything would have been if he had simply valued you while you were still his. That is how a man cries missing you.